What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys. And seeing as January is edging ever so closer, we thought we'd bring you a transfer target stream today. Hope you're all doing well wherever you're watching from. We're going to be looking at certain positions which, you know, a lot of links have been going out over the last week or so for centre backs, centre mids, and in the forward line as well. We'll be focusing on left winger and striking targets. We've actually got quite a lot of names to get through. We want some help from you guys out there as well. So if you have any names that we haven't mentioned, do let us know in the comment section and we'll try get their stats up and have a look into them as well. But do you think that we're going to get one of each of these positions in January? 3 players potentially?
Wishful thinking. You know, with Spurs, there's always leave you wanting more. So I'd love to say we're going to get 3 signings. Huh?
Was that a pun?
Was it?
Always leave you wanting more.
Always leave, exactly. I'll be very surprised if we get 3 signings through the door. But look, if we can, it'll be a brilliant window, and especially adding to the quality we've already added. I'm assuming it's going to be based on outgoings as well, just like it was in the summer. I don't think that's going to have changed this month. So I think it's going to be very much up in the open. But I think if we can get some signings through the door, I think we've had a brilliant window last summer. So I think the squad will really starting to take shape properly if we can get some signings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to know from the comments. Look, it's the festive period. I want to know who you want for Christmas.
All I want for Christmas is Jean-Claire Todibo. Let's go on to him first. Jean-Claire Todibo, obviously a lot of links going out with him at the moment. Apparently Spurs are in talks with him in terms of personal, well, I don't know about personal terms, but they are putting the feelers out, let's say, at the moment. And apparently he's open to joining Tottenham. Market value of 35 million euros, top centre-back in the French squad. He's got all the kind of attributes that we want in an Ange system. He would complement Van de Ven and Romero really well as well. He's a player that Manchester United were heavily linked to in the summer, didn't get it done. I think he might even be above Saliba in the pecking order for France, or definitely on a level playing field with him. So that shows you the quality that he has. In terms of the stats, shall we run through the stats?
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of where he's been in his career, he's been at the likes of Barcelona, Schalke, Benfica, but obviously he's made his home at Nice, joined there at 20 years of age. He's now in his 5th season at Nice, having made over 121 appearances. But you can look
on 25.
No, he's 23.
Oh, he's 23.
He was at the other clubs when he was a youngster. But he, as you can see on the stats, if you scroll up to the pie chart, you can see where he really excels. So you see if that yellow section over there, that's possession. Obviously, that's a very important stat when it comes to how Ange Postecoglou wants to play his centre-backs. And he's clearly performs really highly. Successful take-ons, 94%. So very good when he's taking people on. I mean, obviously, he's not a winger, but does very well there. Progressive passes. Wait, can you take that off the screen? You could, I think. Progressive passes, 83%. Pass completion, 83%. So this is the percentile. Passes, attempts a lot of passes as well. So performs really good when it comes to these metrics. Makes a lot of tackles as well defensively. Performs fairly well. So I think these are really impressive stats when we're looking at a centre-back in Postecoglou's system, how the kind of attributes we want in a centre-back. And obviously, in terms of the eye test, he's strong, he's very quick. They say he's one of the quickest centre-backs in Ligue 1 at the moment. Someone said if we had him and Van de Ven, we'd have the quickest centre-back pairing in the world.
Wow.
So I think in terms of what we want in a centre-back, there's not too many things I can think about what he needs in terms of what we want. And as well, being 23 and having over 100 appearances as well, having that experience is really important as well.
There's someone mentioning here, Michael says, how about his disciplinary record, which is an interesting comment because I have heard about him that he is very rash, very aggressive, a bit like Cuti Romero in that kind of sense. So it'd be interesting to see what that disciplinary record is like.
Yeah, let me take a look.
Because can we afford to get another centre back that consistently gets sent off or gets so many yellows and gets a lot of bookings and stuff?
I can see here in terms of fouls per game, it's under a foul a game most games, so
it's not too bad.
That's pretty good. I'm trying to look at yellow cards. Cards. I don't see yellows here. 1 second. Let me see if I can find how many yellows he's got on this season. Oh yeah, yellow cards. I mean, not that outrageous. A couple seasons ago, he got 6 in one season. Last season, 4. This season, he's got 1. In all, he's got 23 yellow cards in his career. Red cards, though, he did get 2 red cards last season and has had 1 red card this season. So maybe he's prone to a hot-headed moment, I would guess, but it's not something that's too outrageous.
Yeah.
I guess 2 red cards is pretty bad.
I mean, that's actually more than Romero, isn't it? Because Romero averages just 1 a season. I guess it's pretty much the same, I guess.
Yeah, it's not too different. I mean, 1 red card, 1 yellow card this season. I don't know if looking at the stats, it's not like screaming at me saying this guy is going to be missing a lot of games, but I think 2 red cards last season is something to look at, I would say.
Would you mind? Does that bother you at all? Because we do have a lot of players that pick up a lot of bookings. Romero, obviously, is the main culprit. You've got Bissouma, who's had 3 suspensions this season already. A doggy as well, 2 suspensions this season. So
yeah, but then you're ruling out anyone who's ever had 2 red cards in a season. You know what I mean? If that's a problem,
I'm not ruling it out. I'm just asking you if it bothers you.
I'm saying if it was to bother me, then anyone who had over 1 red card in any season would bother me. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's something I can zone in on. Well,
there's not that many players that have over 2 or more red cards in a season.
I think it's not something. Look, if it's something that Spurs have been scouting and said, look, this guy is too much of a hothead, then that would be too much problem because we already have one of those in Romero. We don't want
that's what I'm saying.
To add it in, but I don't know if those stats by itself say that.
But look, there is a narrative around him that's saying that he is an overly aggressive player. But we'll have to wait and see if Spurs do push the button on him. In my personal opinion, he's probably the centre-back I want the most out of everyone. I think he just fits the bill completely. Top-level player, France international, which is probably the best country, footballing nation in the world right now. And he gets into that squad. Just all the attributes just fit to exactly what we want to do. So I really like him, Todibo. So let us know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on Todibo. Next player that we're going to look at is Lloyd Kelly of Bournemouth. 16 million market value, 25 years of age, going into the final 6 months of his contract as well for Bournemouth. He's a player that we were after in the summer. Couldn't get the deal done for one reason or another. He's a good player. To be fair, I liked what I've seen from him from Bournemouth this season. He's a leader as well in that back line. Obviously, when you're comparing him to a Lloyd Kelly, to a Jean-Claire Todibo, you're talking about probably a massive difference in price for someone going into his last 6 months of his contract. But I do think that there's a clear quality gap there.
I agree. And I think in terms of where they are in their careers and how well they're performing, I think Todibo is clearly ahead. I don't know if Kelly would go to Nice and perform as well as Todibo's been doing, be a star in that team in terms of a centre-back like Todibo is. Obviously, he's performed quite well at Bournemouth. Last season, made 23 Premier League appearances. This season, he's made 9 Premier League appearances. And by and large, he's adapted himself well, albeit he's been at a Bournemouth side, apart from recently, who's been very much on the back foot in most games. And maybe you could argue it's been difficult for him to show off his proper qualities. That maybe if he was in a better team, he would be able to really show that, how good he can be. Because sometimes if you're in a defensive team, a defensive system, you're under the cosh a lot. Maybe you can't display your ability to play out the back and your ability to break forward with ball carrying ability and things like that, like Todibo's been able to show. So it's harder to judge someone like Kelly. He has done well at Bournemouth, and he has shown in parts an ability to do those kind of things. A bit like Vicario, he didn't really was able to display his passing ability last season for a Empoli team who were near the bottom of the league. But Spurs saw enough of him, and when he was able to show those qualities, that he does have the passing ability to play. So maybe Spurs are looking at Kelly saying, look, he doesn't display it as often as in other players, but maybe when he does display it, he shows he can play that way.
Yeah. I think, like, in terms of the attributes that he does have, I completely agree with you. You know, it's in different systems, you know, you can't really see the full kind of potential of a player. And especially when you're comparing the likes of Ange Ball to maybe what he has been doing at Bournemouth over the last couple of years. But what he does have is leadership ability in the back line, which I think is a massive plus in his favour. Quick, strong, and good ball playing ability as well. But let's go and have a look at those stats.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to, obviously, the stats, he doesn't perform anywhere near as well as Todibo does. The possession stats are not terrible. Obviously, progressive carries is decent, but successful take-ons doesn't really take people on. Maybe that's under instruction more than anything. Progressive passes, he performs quite low on the amount he does there. Pass completion, that's quite worrying, 17%. So maybe he's forced
I thought he was
long.
always quite strong at passing, to be fair.
Well,
the stats suggest otherwise.
Pass completion. I mean, passes attempted, so he attempts quite low amount of passes, but his pass completion is really low. Whether that's an indication of he's forced to go long a lot, and that means it's harder to pull off passes rather than trying to play out the back. Maybe that's an indication.
When's this stats from? What's the metrics?
These are the last 365 days.
Is there a way of looking at it just under Iraola?
Yeah.
Because I'd be interesting to see that.
Just this season, yeah, he performs a bit better. If you scroll up, Sammy, if you go to, it says 20 at the top, 23, 24 Premier League. I don't know if you can see it. It's just above the chart. If you go above the chart, go down. Oh, it's not there for some reason. All right, I've got it here anyway. But I've got it right here.
Yeah, just read it out.
Progressive passes, carries is a bit better, 74th percentile. Take-ons 53%, up a lot more. His pass completion rate is still low, 18%, 18th percentile. Sorry, passes attempted still quite low. So it definitely does improve, but it's still not at an incredible level. But it's a lot better than it is under previous managers. So I think that's an indication that with better tactics he can improve.
In terms of like what he kind of brings to you, or why Spurs and Daniel Levy particularly would like a Lloyd Kelly, obviously, is the cost implications, right? Him running down his contract. And an interesting thing about Lloyd Kelly was when Scott Parker came in, or beginning of last season, not when he came in, but at the beginning of last season, Scott Parker actually made him captain. And as soon as Gary O'Neill came in, he stripped him of that captaincy. So I'm not sure what that kind of tells you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say. I don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but maybe it was a case of the new manager not feeling he's as much of a leader as Scott Parker felt like. So I can't really speak to that.
In terms of his injury problems, a lot of people in the comments suggesting that he's very injury prone.
He's injured right now.
He is injured right now, back in a week or so's time potentially, but he has missed 11 games due to an ankle injury this season. But last season, he was injury-free for the whole season, so I don't think that suggests he's got like a problem.
Although it's important to know he only played 23 games last season. So obviously maybe not all due to injury, but maybe he also found a bit of trouble getting into the team as well.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something to note as well.
He did, because for some reason, Scott Parker really fancied him, obviously made him captain. But then when Gary O'Neill came in, he kind of played a bit part role.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know what the indication. Maybe he's not that good, or essentially that's what Gary O'Neill felt anyway. But Iraola seems to pick him a lot when he's available. So
yeah, but obviously Gary O'Neill, Scott Parker, and Iraola all play very different styles of football. So maybe it just is down to the brand of football and the suitability. And now Iraola has brought in a more attacking, possession-based style of football. Maybe that speaks our language a bit more.
Yeah, and clearly, as I say, the stats suggest in a better system he can perform better.
Look, I like Lloyd Kelly, I do, but
it's a value pick. It's something, if you're looking for a bit of undervalue, and he has potential, but it definitely has the ability of, like, we sign him and it doesn't quite work out. There's more of a risk of that happening, I would say, in this one.
Yeah, but also, like, when you're looking at it, if Kelly comes in, it's literally just as a backup. That's what you're buying him for. You're not buying him to start over a Kuti or a Mickey van der Ven anytime. But if you bring in a Todibo, then that's an actual question, you know, who is going to start at centre back? You know, that's a real selection headache there.
And that's what I'd rather.
Yeah, obviously. Next up, we're going to be talking about Tosin Adarabioyo, 26 years of age, 12 million market value, plays for Fulham. He as well, his contract is running down. I think I prefer him over to Lloyd Kelly. I like the attributes that he brings. He's just come back from injury. He started to play games again, even got on the score sheet for Fulham last week. And I think he would do really well in like a possession-based style of football, quick, strong centre-back. Again, a player with a good ball-playing ability.
Yeah, and we can see he's strong. He's got good physical attributes. And looking at his stats, he's also fairly good. The stats also speak quite well in terms of if you're looking at a player who you want in terms of the attributes on the ball, how good he is, composure, playing for a Fulham team as well, who have been quite defensive for a lot of Marco Silva's time, but he's actually performing, as you can see, quite well on the possession-based stats. Progressive passes quite high, progressive carries is pretty good, take-ons. He's pretty strong in all of them. The only worry is pass completion's quite low at 40%. If you looked at someone like Van der Ven this season, I believe, I'll take another look, but I believe his pass completion was very high, one of the highest. So I think that's something Ange definitely values, but maybe, pass completion in the 89th percentile. So that's, I think he doesn't want his centre-backs to give possession away. So he'll definitely.
Really?
I think but I think it's important in terms of he needs them to be playing short, quick, accurate, not going long all the time. Maybe that's something Tosin needs to definitely improve on, because in terms of passes attempted, he attempts quite a lot, 76 percentile, so he's quite high, but the pass completion rate is low. So that's definitely something he needs to work
But obviously
on.
Fulham play a completely different brand of football to us, and maybe he is hitting it long a bit more often than maybe what a Van der Ven and a Romero would do, where we build up from the back. You know, Fulham, I don't know. I don't watch them week in, week out, but maybe they do go a bit more route one at times.
But definitely progressive passes, progressive carries, take-ons, that's really impressive metrics for, I mean, this is mostly last season, because he's only played 5 games this season in total because he's been injured. But that's really promising metrics, and that definitely shows more value than maybe someone like Kelly in terms of finding value in the market.
I'd much prefer Tosin to a Kelly. I think there would be about a similar price point as well, to be honest. And the plus about these two guys as well, both fill the English quota or the homegrown quota as well, being British themselves. So again, I think Tosin doesn't come in to provide competition for places. He comes in as a backup. If he wants to come in to a new club and just be a backup, I don't know. I think maybe, I don't know who wants to come in and provide just a backup place, but I do feel like we need competition for places rather than just signing backups.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just looking at more just in-depth stats as well. It's important to be very good against dribblers in our system, because centre-backs a lot of the time find themselves one-on-one with an attacker, and his dribbling, his tackling against dribblers is very strong. 95th percentile for dribblers, percentage of dribblers tackled, and in terms of in general dribblers tackled, he's in the 82nd percentile. So
he actually stacks up really well in the metrics, doesn't he?
He's one of the highest for engaging dribblers, and for actually winning the ball back for them, he is very high. So amongst other centre backs, so definitely very good in the metrics as well. For aerial duels, really high. Aerials 85th percentile, percentage as well, 77. So pretty good.
We need a bit of that, to be honest.
Pretty good in the air, and obviously in possession, he has always averages quite very high for amount of touches, passes, all that kind of stuff. So definitely a player who performs very well in the metrics.
And I think this one would definitely be a strong data-led approach for Tosin Adarabioyo. Not only does he stack high on the metrics, but you're talking about, in comparison to Todibo, probably a fairly cheap price point.
Yeah, exactly. I do think Todibo at 23 is probably as good or better than him even now. So you're looking at a player who's got a far higher ceiling. But when you're looking at right now, signing a centre-back for this season, like, I don't think there's a gigantic difference for the rest of the season if you would sign a Tosin or Todibo, what would happen. But I would say in the future, you're much better off probably investing in a Todibo. But Tosin definitely has his qualities.
I think for me right now, it'll be Todibo, then Tosin, then Lloyd Kelly. But let's look at the next centre-back, and it's Radu Dragusin of Genoa, 21 years of age, 10 million market value. He's a player that has come through at Juventus, so Paratici obviously would have known him very well. He's a player as well that Spurs have been scouting, heavy links with him. Apparently his agent has been speaking a lot, and he's been saying that Spurs scouts went to watch him on Friday night when Genoa were playing. I don't know too much about him. I've been looking into his metrics quite a bit, and he does seem like a defender that has got a fairly high ceiling, to be honest.
Yeah, still, 21 years of age. He's still fairly, I would say, he's still fairly new to playing regular football. But obviously, last season he was in Serie B. He did play 38 games, but before that, he only got more than 10 appearances in a season once, and that was in 21-22. So playing first team football at the top level, in a first division, this is pretty much his first season where he's playing week in, week out in Serie A. So definitely take that into consideration compared to all the other players we've spoken about, a lot more experienced. But when it comes to how he's performing, looks like, from what I can see, he's a bit less composed, and in possession, I would say it doesn't seem as though he seems quite an aggressive player when it comes to in possession, because when it comes to take-ons, passes, carries, all this kind of stuff, he doesn't perform very well. But what he does perform very well at is shot creating actions, shots on goal, assists, expected assists, those kind of things, progressive passes received, touches in the attacking penalty area. So what this tells me is definitely a guy who likes to get forward, that's for sure, as a centre-back. And maybe he's a very brave centre-back as well. Maybe someone who can be kind of harnessed when it comes to his qualities, because he seems to be a player who loves to get forward, who loves to support the attack. But when it comes to him being composed, build up from the back and stuff, doesn't seem to be a player at this point in time who's maybe ready to play how we want to play. But maybe he's still 21, so he could definitely build into that player, but the metrics aren't there.
Maybe that's kind of positive in a way, because he can come here and kind of grow with this team, maybe not come in as a starter or come in as someone that's going to challenge Romero and Van de Ven straight away, but someone that can come in, be nurtured, and maybe wouldn't mind sitting on the bench for a little bit, and later down the line challenging maybe a Romero for that spot.
Yeah, potentially, but I get it's about what potential we see in him in terms of the attributes he has, whether it fits us. I would argue right now, in terms of the attributes I'm seeing, it doesn't seem to be a perfect fit. But that doesn't mean he can't develop into that if we've scouted him and decided, look, he's a bit raw. He doesn't do some of these things very well. But if we got him in early and we trained him right, he's definitely got the attributes to play, because he's clearly a very brave player. He clearly has a lot of you have to be very brave to have a lot of these metrics that he's got. So if you can harness that bravery in a different way in terms of playing out the back instead of getting forward, maybe that's a way to look at it, and a player we can work with.
Where do you think he stacks for you out between the defenders that we've spoken about so far? Because obviously he won't be as high up on the list as Todibo, but in terms of Adebayo and Lloyd Kelly, would you prefer him?
From what I can see, I'd probably prefer Tosin. I think Tosin's more ready now. I think there's probably a bit of a gap between him and Tosin in what I can see. But him and Kelly, Kelly doesn't perform that great in the metrics either, but he does perform better this season under Iraola than he did last season. So there's potential there. I guess what I would say is maybe the sample size is too small, because last season it was in Serie B. This season it's 16 games in Serie A. Before that, he's only had a handful of games in Serie A, so maybe it's too early to judge him.
It's interesting as well, because when we signed Mickey Van de Ven, he's off the back of only one season at a top flight league as well. He only had one season for Wolfsburg. Before that, the only first team football he had was in the Dutch second division. So maybe that's, Mickey Van de Ven obviously is, in my opinion, one of the best centre-backs already in the Premier League, which is crazy to think about with the actual experience he has had. So maybe it's not too much worth looking into that kind of thing.
I think Van de Ven had 2 seasons in Wolfsburg. The season before we signed him, he'd pretty much played every game.
Yeah.
33 starts.
Season before was only like 5, wasn't it?
Season before was 5, but what I'm saying is Dragusin is right now, this season, he's playing very well, but maybe it's one worth waiting to the end of the season so we get a full picture of him rather than 16 games and jumping in January. Unless we're really convinced we need to get ahead of the game here and sign him. But I wouldn't say these metrics are convincing, but yeah.
I mean, and because like of his Juventus links and everything like that, I mean, this one just stinks a bit of Fabio Paratici, to be honest.
Definitely.
And if that is the case, then I'm all for it, because I think his talent ID and his track record so far of bringing in players have been brilliant.
But what I would also say is about when you say about Van de Ven, when we looked at his metrics, this was exactly what we wanted. You know what I mean? I remember looking at it and thinking, this is a guy we want. Yeah. This is a guy we need. I don't see that with Dragusin right now, but again, he's still 21, even younger than Van de Ven, so has time to grow and develop.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to be looking at Ilya Zabayani of Bournemouth, 21 years of age, 25 million market value. I think he's a player, actually, I was really interested in before he went to Bournemouth. I remember talking about it a few times here with you guys. He's very tall. I think he's very quick as well. He's broken into the Bournemouth team this season. Obviously, they signed him last year, didn't they?
FM legend.
Yeah, absolute FM legend, to be honest. And I think he's got a very big future in the game, but I still think he's very young and very raw still.
Yeah. Last season, in his first season in the Premier League, only made 5 appearances for Bournemouth. I think that probably tells the story of how we struggled to adapt a bit last season at 20 years of age. But he was quite highly sought after. This season, I'm looking at his stats under Iraola. I think he started every game, played every minute. So I think at 21, to have that kind of trust in you is very impressive. Performs quite well in the defensive metrics, although what I would say is defensive metrics are hard to judge, because just because you make more tackles or interceptions doesn't really mean you're better. I think those stats a lot of the time say more about the team than the other things.
And you got to remember as well, like Bournemouth haven't been the Bournemouth that they've been for the past 3 weeks all season, have they? Like in the first half of the season, they were like not that great and coming under pressure quite a lot, quite consistently. Exactly.
So defensive stats are decent. When it comes to in possession, take-ons is decent, so he's pretty good at pretty good at driving into midfield. When it comes to his passing, though, I'm trying to get his passing stats. Doesn't perform too well. Pass completion when it's medium-long passing is decent. His long-range passing is not bad. 72nd percentile for long passes, but they're not the greatest, I would say. But again, he plays for a Bournemouth side who maybe struggle in possession in general. Apart from maybe recently, they have struggled to be a side building up from the back. Like maybe they've really got to grips with it. What I would say is he definitely looks like a player who has adapted well to the Premier League after a year of struggling. Definitely seems very quickly adapting as well. So maybe it's a case of we can see a player who's a quick learner, who's getting to grips with the Premier League very quickly, and that's something we can work with. Again, it's a very small sample size, because it was based off 5 games last season and 16 this season. But then he was highly sought after beforehand at Kiev. So obviously, I'm assuming we've done some scouting before, and then we take that scouting, we add it to what we're seeing now in the Premier League. So I'm guessing there's more information that Spurs have than obviously we do, clearly. But
yeah, and obviously, like him being 21 years of age and not playing that much in the Premier League, it's hard to really judge on these metrics. But I do believe there's a lot more to come from Ilya Zabayani, to be honest. I think he's got a big future in this game. But I also believe that the cost implications might be a bit too much for someone like that right now, because he's only just joined Bournemouth last year. How much are they going to command from him? He's been trusted to play week in, week out right now. They obviously see him having a big future. So I believe like it could be a bit over maybe what he's worth, what they're going to ask for him.
Definitely in January it'll be a big price.
Even in the summer, I think.
Yeah, to be fair, because he only signed last season. So if you're maybe discussing him and Lloyd Kelly, obviously Zabayani's younger, maybe a higher ceiling, but the price is going to be a lot higher. And whether, like, it's probably going to be similar to what you're probably paying for a Todibo, to be honest, because Premier League clubs, they always demand a high fee, higher fee than Ligue 1. So
as much as I would like to see him through the door, Zabayani, I just don't when you're talking about the price point for him, I just don't see it being realistic when you could go get a Todibo for about a similar price. I just don't see the point of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Next up, we're going to talk about Ben Godfrey, 25 years of age, 8 million market value. Obviously, he is at Everton. He's an interesting candidate because he can play left back as well. So he's a bit versatile like that. Centre back, left centre back, and left back. I was actually really interested in him when he was at Norwich and did end up going to Everton. I think he's a really good player, but also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't he have a lot of injury problems, Ben Godfrey?
I mean, this season, he's had a lot of injury problems. He's only played 2 games this season. Last season as well, he only played 13. So I think he got a long injury last season, potentially that's bled into this season, if I remember rightly. But when he's fully fit and available, he does seem to be a player Everton do play, and he is versatile, as you say. Can play multiple positions, and he's he's good physicality as well. I've been impressed with Ben Godfrey, actually. I have, but I actually like the look of more the look of their new one, Branthwaite. He's looking really good.
I don't think we get Branthwaite out of Everton. No chance. I think
I
think he is, and second of all, like they're gonna command so much money for him, new up and coming from the academy. They're going to put so much money on his head. So I just don't think, I think it's much more likely that we can probably convince them to part with a Ben Godfrey than a Branthwaite.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely at the moment. I mean, this season he only played 2 games. So obviously, I think when you're looking at Godfrey this season, he definitely is more expendable. And
there was a time where Ben Godfrey was even in the conversation for the England setup. I think he's had a couple of caps as well.
Has he had caps?
I think he has, yeah.
I'm not sure if he has.
He's had 2 caps.
He's had 2 caps?
Yeah, I'll tell you who he played against. He's played in friendlies against Romania and Austria in 2021.
So a while ago. Nearly coming up to 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember he was doing really well that stage. But I don't know, I feel like his career has stalled a bit. Past few seasons, since that period where he was really good.
Like you said, he got a massive injury last season.
Yeah, he got injuries. He hasn't been playing as much. So,
as a player, though, I think he's got the attributes that we're probably kind of looking for, and I really like the versatility about him as well.
I like the versatility, but I don't know if he could play the inverted fullback role.
You know what he could be? He could be our Ben Davies replacement. Centre back and left back, backup option.
Yeah, potentially. And I think those players actually, come to think of it, are very important, because if you look at Man City, how they've adapted to the squad depth they have. What they have is loads of different defenders who can just play in multiple positions. Like a Kanji can play across the back line, Ake can play left back, centre back, Stones can play midfield and centre back, Gvardiol can play left back and centre back.
Yeah.
So that's how they are so adaptable, because they've got players who can play multiple positions. So I think people like Godfrey are definitely underrated in terms of players who are versatile like that.
So what's your thinking?
I just think at the moment, he's come off a big injury, he's out of form, hasn't quite hit the heights as he did maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't think he's a better centre-back than someone like a Tosin, to be honest. But I think he's more versatile than a Tosin, so that could be more valuable in general. But I also have question marks. Could he play that inverted role, fullback?
Why don't you think he could play that inverted role?
Because he'd be like Emerson there. You know
reckon?
What I mean? Yeah.
You don't think he's good enough on the ball at all?
No. No, he's not a Porro on the ball, put it that way. He's an Emerson.
Not many people are a Porro.
I know, but he's an Emerson. You know what I mean? He's good. He can maybe knit some stuff together, but is he going to actually...
But Emerson just isn't good whatsoever. I mean, I think he's a level above Emerson in terms of quality on the ball.
I don't know. I think he's probably similar. I don't think Emerson's bad on the ball. I just think he's not attacking. He's not an offensive player on the ball, if you know what I mean. And I think the same with Godfrey. I think he can probably keep the ball, but is he an offensive player like a Udogie? Can he really be offensive in that sense? I don't know.
We don't know, because he's never been asked to do that.
I mean, when I see him for Everton, he's excelled at fullback defensively. He's been really hard to beat and stuff like that. Do I see him getting to the byline, putting crosses in, being a
maybe threat? That's his instruction, though.
Yeah, it might be, but on that basis, I can't say can do the job of an inverted full. That's why I've got question marks about it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But obviously, there's a caveat into it, because we just don't know, because he hasn't been asked to do that job, and he's played in a defensive system.
I would say the evidence that we've seen suggests unlikely. That's what I would argue.
Last centre-back that we're going to talk about is Morato of Benfica, another player who we've been heavily linked with for this upcoming January transfer window. 22 years of age, 13 million market value. To be honest, I don't really know much about him. There's obviously quite a bit of hype about him at the moment. Young player, up-and-coming player. And you know how at Benfica and these kind of Portuguese team, they seem to produce gem after gem after gem. Mm-hmm. So it could be potentially, if we do go get Morato, getting in there early before these kind of players sometimes blow up. Yeah,
look, he's tall, 6'3", 22 years of age. It's a weird one because if you look at the amount of appearances he made, 8 appearances this season, only 9 last season, and then 3 seasons ago made 14. So I don't know why he's fell out of favour the next season a bit. Now this season he seems to be starting week in, week out. But looking at his metrics, he performs extremely well when it comes to possession. These are like top of the range, basically, when it comes to what we're looking at. You add into that, he's very tall. I don't know if look, I'm not going to lie, this is a player probably I've seen play the least out of all of them in terms of what I know about him. But I'm just looking at the metrics.
But the metrics going to sway you, I can tell already.
The metrics I can see are extremely strong. I don't know, but maybe these are great metrics and then he's a slow coach. Maybe he doesn't have a half turn. Maybe he's like Maguire on the half turn. I don't know. So maybe anyone in the comments can tell me, is this guy quick? Is he slow? I'm not 100% sure. But in terms of possession metrics, defensive metrics as well. Let me see how he performs against like dribblers and stuff defensively. Again, obviously he's playing against Portuguese attackers, but if I'm looking defensively, very strong when it comes against dribblers, it seems. 99th percentile, extremely strong. So this guy seems brave. He seems great on the ball. He's tall. He's strong. He's young. I mean, I don't see too many downsides at the moment from what I'm seeing. Defensive stats as well seems quite good at a good age, and also seems to be a player who's really starting to potentially burst into life. He's not a player who's been playing week in, week out for Ben. I guess that's one thing that's against him, actually, the fact that for Benfica he's only played 33 games in his whole career for Benfica. Over the stretch of 4 seasons, so it's not like he's a massively
young though
experienced player, but he is young. So
he's also played quite a handful of games at left back this season, which is interesting. Versatile. So another player that's versatile. And
based on these stats, seems to be more suited to in possession from fullback than some of the other ones we've seen.
Judging by this, he's actually got a higher match rating, playing at left back than centre back.
Is he? And he's left-footed, is he?
I imagine so. I'll check that in a.
Yeah, left-footed, perfect, even more perfect, I would say. I think all the other ones, except for Kelly,
strong in the air, it seems.
Every other one we've seen is right-footed, apart from Kelly. So I think left-footed is always a bit of a priority as well.
Strong in the air, strong at tackling, strong at passing. I mean, he kind of ticks majority of boxes, to be honest.
Gives you the versatility of playing him at left back as well, it looks like. So,
and you would assume that if he has strong games at left back in a Benfica side, who are majority attacking side, you would assume that he is quick, wouldn't you?
Yep. I mean, I'm trying to look what he's got for pace on FM. Maybe that'll give us an indication he's fast. But in terms of the metrics, look at those attributes are very enticing. Pace doesn't seem that great on FM, but it doesn't seem too slow. 13.
Comments are saying he's not overly blessed with pace.
Not overly blessed.
He isn't quick. More like a Stones kind of pace.
Okay, Stones is something we can work it with, but
he's no Mickey van der Ven.
Van der Ven. Would you say Romero's blessed with pace? I mean,
Romero's not blessed with pace. No.
Yeah, he's not.
He doesn't have supreme pace, but he's got comfortable amount of pace,
but not slow. He definitely seems someone who excites me, though, looking at the metrics. But maybe it's a case of Spurs need to decide. First of all, he sounds like he's going to be fairly expensive. And maybe it's something Spurs need to decide. Are we looking for someone who's is pace like a vital attribute? It seems as though like people like even Kelly, Adebayo, Godfrey, Todibo, all the ones, to be honest, that we've looked at, pace seems to be one of their main attributes. And maybe this guy, he seems to be a lot better on the ball than he is off it, maybe.
That's the kind of only downside, if it is if you do even consider it a downside, because they're talking about 67 to 73 pace on FM. So if it is in that ballpark figure and that is a reality, I don't have a problem with that too much.
I mean, look, Ben Davis ain't the quickest, is he? He's playing very well, but obviously other metrics. Yeah, I think he's definitely an exciting one. I think I'll definitely prefer him to a Godfrey. I'll prefer him, looks like anyway, to probably a Kelly. Would I prefer him to a Tosin? Depends on the price, I guess. But I still think Todibo is the number one. Yeah,
I think Todibo has to be the number one. So if we're going to rank these centre-backs, we've got 7 of them, I believe. So Todibo has to be number one.
Yeah.
Number 2, would Morato even go as far as number 2?
I think
he would, you know.
Are we taking price into it or just like who we want?
I think who we want, is probably the best way to go.
Probably he does go number 2 then.
It's funny, we're going number 2. We've never seen him play.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the
That's modern football for you guys.
I think Tosin goes in number 3, based on what we're looking at. I think Tosin probably goes in at number 3.
So we'll go Todibo, Morato, Tosin, Dragusin, Zabbiani, Godfrey, Kelly.
I would say, based on what I've seen, Godfrey would go below Kelly, I would say.
Okay, I'm happy to do that too.
Zabriani. Yeah, I would say that's fair.
All right. Well, that is the centre-backs. In terms of those centre-backs, let us know in the comment section below which one you would prefer.
And any centre-back you want us to look into, we'll take a look before we'll come back to it. We'll come back later maybe to see players that people want to look at. Next
up, we're going to be looking at central midfielders. We know that Bissouma suspended and at the AFCON till the end of February, more likely. Pape Matar as well at the AFCON, which... Bentancur obviously injured, Madison injured. So January could be really tricky in terms of navigating those central midfield areas. So we're going to have to bring in, I think we're going to have to bring in one, at least on loan at the beginning of January to really help us get through that period.
But if we don't get one at the beginning of January, is there any point of getting one at all? You know what I mean?
Probably not, no.
Because all of a sudden, if you get one at the end, Bentancur's going to be back soon, the players are going to be back from AFCON.
But I would say when you're looking at the midfield options that we have with Gio Lo Celso, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and even I would go as far to say is Ollie Skip as well. First of all, are they going to be here next season? Could they potentially leave in January? Are they going to go in the summer? So if those 3 players or even just 2 of those players go, we still need to bring in one, right?
In January?
Because there's rumours of Højbjerg going in January. There's even rumours of Lo Celso potentially as well.
If they go in January, we definitely need one because we're literally going to have no one.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if they're staying in January... and we don't bring one in before the beginning, I just don't see the point of bringing one in.
It could hurry up our need to bring one in if we get good offers for these guys in January.
Yeah, 100%.
But look, we got 5 midfielders to talk about. First up, we're going to be talking about Calvin Phillips of Manchester City, 28 years old, 28 million market value, which is crazy for the amount of money they paid for him about a year and a half ago. I think this guy has supreme ability. I love Calvin Phillips. He was England's Player of the Year not long ago. He was like on a level playing field with Declan Rice in that moment in time.
Playing at the Euros, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant throughout that moment in time. And I think if we can sort of bring him in, there might not be the desperate need for someone like that right now with the kind of players that we do have. But I think he's a step up from Højbjerg, a massive step up from Skip. And I think he's someone that can come in here and fight for his place over the next few years.
Is he more of a 6 or an 8?
6, I think.
Yeah, I think looking at the attributes, that's where it seems as well. One thing he doesn't seem to, if I'm looking at the attributes, something doesn't perform too well at is successful take on, so his ball carrying ability needs work, but passing ability is quite strong. Obviously, this is only based on 500 minutes though, so I guess maybe if I was to look at a fairer,
I think look at his Leeds days.
Yeah, I would say maybe his Leeds days would be a fairer, probably indication of what his true ability. Again, performs quite well passing and defensively performs well as well. See, for midfielders, it's a bit different. I think you can take a lot more from the defensive stats for midfielders than you can for defenders, although it's still quite hard to judge. But I think midfielders, you want a good total of like tackles and stuff. I think that's a good indication of them getting stuck in. For defenders, it's different because someone like Van Dijk, he might not make a tackle the whole game, but doesn't mean he's had a bad game. You know what I mean? So it's a bit different. So when it comes to his defensive stats, for Leeds, strong, definitely puts in a tackle. In possession, passing is good, but when it comes to ball carrying ability, definitely seems not great at the moment. At that time, but definitely seems someone who can play in that number 6 role in terms of just a volume passer. Seems quite similar to like a Højbjerg, to be honest. No, it doesn't seem too dissimilar in terms of the attributes.
I think, like, in terms of style of play, he is a bit similar to Højbjerg, but I just believe he is much better than a Pierre, to be honest. I really do believe that. Yeah, I think so. And I think it's good for us. I think when you put him in that number 6 position, I think, you know, it'll make us so hard to break down when you've got him, you've got the 2 inverted fullbacks, you've got Romero and Mickey van der Ven backing them up as well. I just think it'll make us a lot more solid.
Yeah, I agree. And clearly, his most impressive metrics are definitely defensive ones. Performs very well in the defensive metrics. But passing as well, he's pretty solid, albeit not as good as some other midfielders, but he's still above average in all his passing metrics. But we know how when he's at his best, he can perform at a very high level. So for me, it's not one I would sign permanently in January, but I do think a 6-month loan would definitely benefit us.
You see, I actually would. If the opportunity arose and we could sign him permanently for a good price, you know, he's been completely out of favour of Man City. Questions do need to be asked, like why does Pep Guardiola just not want him at all? Why sign him for that amount of money if you just don't want to play him? Has something happened? Is there any sort of issues there? I don't know. But I think on the face of things, from what I've seen from him as a player for England and for Leeds, I would sign him permanently with, you know, opening the door for Pierre to leave the club. And I think, like, if we could sell Pierre and bring him in, I think that's an upgrade. So I don't see why the downside of signing him permanently.
I'm just not convinced that he's going to recapture his form at the moment. I have to wait. I would want a loan. I think, considering he's 27, he was a bit younger, I think I would agree. But considering he's 27, the resale value there isn't going to be great in terms of if it doesn't work out. So I think
maybe a loan with an option.
That's what I'm saying. A loan with an option to buy if he's showing good signs. Then I'll do it. I did really like him at Leeds, but it's now been 18 months and he's barely played a game. So that's definitely a red flag. As much as whatever we want to say about it, it's definitely a red flag. And when he has played, he hasn't been great, albeit it's a very small sample size. And we have got a lot of good midfielders, so I wouldn't want to just go and splash a lot of money on him without being sure he's going to really improve us. So that's why I think I'd only consider a loan with an option. And I guess if you're City, that would make sense at the moment because they're not using him.
Yeah. I have seen reports that saying they don't even want to consider loans. They just want to sell him, which is interesting. But I guess, like, when push comes to shove, maybe they will consider the loan because they might not have any other options. But there are links with him to go to like Juventus, go and play for top clubs out in Italy. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it kind of pans out for Calvin Phillips. But I massively rate him. I really do. I think he's a top player. And if he can get close to that form or even get better, we've got a proper player on our hands. Proper player. But next up, we're going to be talking about Conor Gallagher, Chelsea's midfielder, 23 years of age, 42 million euro market value. There are obviously caveats there because he does play for Chelsea. Will they deal with us? Will they sell him to us? I think he's seen a lot of minutes, been captain for Chelsea more or less all season. He's a player with a good mentality on him. He's a very aggressive player as well in that middle of the park. I think he would suit Ange Ball down to a T, to be honest. He's a player also that we were linked to in the summer. We were looking to get a deal done, but obviously it didn't happen for one reason or another. I think he'll be fairly expensive as well, which is obviously a downside in terms of the Spurs hierarchy. I'd really like to see Conor Gallagher through the door, but I just don't see a way how Chelsea sell to us. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I can see them selling, but I can't see them selling to us. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so unless Todd Boehly just doesn't really get the rivalry, maybe he's more willing to say, who knows. But when it comes to his metrics, I don't think you'll see a better profile for a number 8 in Ange Ball than what this guy is offering, because he's near the top for pretty much every metric, apart from, I think that's clearances. He's above average for everything. which is incredible. I think, and as you say, he's played pretty much started every game this season for Chelsea. Look, a lot of Chelsea
been playing
fans,
as more as number 10 for Chelsea.
He's kind of rotated with Enzo. Sometimes Enzo's in the 10, sometimes he in the 10. But I think when it comes to being a number 8 in Ange ball, he's going to find himself in that number 10 position a lot of time anyway. So it's not something that concerns me. Oh, he's been maybe further forward for Chelsea. I think the number 8 in for us, look at Sarr, how many times he finds himself in the penalty box or forward and then defending as well. His defensive metrics.
I was actually pointing it out as a good thing, not a bad thing. A good thing.
Yeah. I'm not saying, but I'm saying maybe you could say those numbers are skewed because he plays a bit further forward. But I would say that if you look at the defensive metrics, really, really, really impressive. He really puts a foot in. We can see he one of the highest tacklers in the league from midfield. But look at those possession stats, so incredible. The only downside of him is that he hasn't maybe translated as much into output as he should have. He's got 4 assists and no goals, and that'll be disappointing because maybe in the chances he should have at least had a goal. But 4 assists isn't bad, to be fair.
But in terms of assists, does that not say more maybe about Chelsea's front line and how Chelsea are at the moment? Nicholas Jackson obviously misses a host of chances each game. They're not clinical by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that's also a good point. You could also definitely look at it in that way as well. But I don't think there's a more all-round midfielder at that age right now playing regularly in the Premier League that playing in that number 8 position that Spurs could acquire potentially. So I think he'd be a perfect fit. I really do. I think he's doing really well. Yeah, the only question mark is, are Chelsea willing to deal with us?
And if he's willing to come as well, being a Cobham boy and all that kind of thing.
It's an interesting one because I think with Chelsea's FFP potential problems, I think Gallagher might have to be a full guy because if they sell him, that's really helpful for FFP because he's an academy player, so it really helps out. But
do you think Poch would be willing to help us?
I don't know about willing to help us. They might have to sell him. And if no one else is willing to put the money up, and if we're the only ones, maybe there's not going to be a choice. I don't know how close it actually was in the summer because there was a lot of talk about it, wasn't there? And then we put in a bid on deadline day or something, didn't we? It didn't quite match their expectations. It didn't quite happen. But if we actually agreed a fee with them, is it possible? If it is possible, I think we should definitely do it.
How much should we be talking, though, like to get him out of Chelsea? 50 million? Something like that?
It depends how desperate they are to sell.
Yeah.
Like, surely they wouldn't sell him unless they're desperate to sell. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't they keep him? So if they're desperate to sell, I think we're looking at maybe 40 million.
You reckon 40?
45 maybe? I don't know.
I think depends. Somewhere in between 40 and 50 million.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd really like to see him. I really like his mentality. I really like his aggression on the pitch. I mean, he's another one that just collects yellow cards as well, though, and will probably be in for a couple of suspensions a season as well. But I do think like he fits this squad. I just think he's a good fit, and I think he would thrive massively under Ange.
But he is a number 8, not a 6. So in terms of if we sign him, and let's say we sign him to replace Højbjerg, let's say Højbjerg leaves and replace him, who do we play in the 6 for the foreseeable? I don't really know. In January, you're talking about who do we play? Yeah, that's obviously an issue.
It's got to be Højbjerg.
Yeah, well, I'm saying we'll probably only sign him.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Wilfred Ndidi of Leicester, 27 years of age, 80 million market value. He's actually having a really good season, but it is in the Championship, obviously. I do think he's a level above the Championship. He was having there was a big talk about him a couple years back when he just joined Leicester. You know, he was a top midfielder in the Premier League, did have a significant drop-off, which has got to be said, which is concerning. But he's one that definitely speaks Levy's language because he's out of contract in the summer, so he could be like a pretty good free pickup if he can rediscover that form.
I would say age-wise, very similar to Basuma and Bentancur. He's not. I think we're probably more often going to be looking at a younger player for me than Ndidi, and especially given the fact he's been off form Premier League-wise for a while. He is a number 6 though, good defensively. On the ball though, when it comes to passing and stuff like that, is he of the required standard? I think his ball carrying ability is probably not bad. You can see here from his stats, ball carries is decent, but passing, doesn't attempt many passes. His pass completion low, progressive passes is low. So I don't know. I don't know if he's the right fit. And given then you put into his fact his age, he's out of form. Yes, you could get him cheap, but I don't know. I don't know if this is one I'd go for, to be honest. And again,
not even on a free transfer.
That's in the summer.
Yeah.
Well, then we'd have Basuma and Bentancur back. I don't see the need to buy him.
Well, you know what? A loan. Well, I guess that doesn't make sense for Leicester.
Well, a 6-month loan, yeah. I mean, unless there's a guaranteed fee there at the end of it somehow, I don't see how.
Unless you have a loan. I mean, I used to love Indeed. I really did. I used to love Indeed, but I don't know. Just because of this form that he's been on in the last couple of years, and now he's starting to perform because he's in the Championship, it just hits alarm bells for me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we're basing off his Championship form, we should re-sign Winks.
I'm sure you'd love that.
Come on, bring Winks home.
So Ndidi, I think,
I don't think
let's just breeze past Ndidi because I don't think either of us are kind of excited about him. Next up, we're going to talk about Kefren Thuram. Obviously the son of Lilian Thuram, the brother of Marcus Thuram. He's making waves for Nice. He really is. He's having a very strong season. 22 years of age, 40 million euro market value. They got a couple of good young players, don't they, Nice, that we could potentially pick up. And every time I've seen him play, I've been super impressed. Super impressed.
And he was very heavily linked with Liverpool, wasn't he? Was it last summer?
Yeah,
or
last
2 summers
summer.
Ago?
Last summer, yeah.
So that's, I think, again, potentially more of a number 8. He's quite decently offensive as well, likes to get forward. Possession attributes very good. Really, what's really great about him is his ball carrying ability. Really great at dribbling. He's hard to handle when you're up against him. He's a very strong, powerful, bit Dembele like when it comes to taking people on. Passing wise, not as good, but not horrific. I mean, pass completion's okay, but progressive passes and the amount of passes attempted, not as strong. So he's not really a sitting passing player. He likes to get on the ball, take people on, get forward in that way. So I would say probably more of an 8 as well. If you look at his shot creating actions, shots total, definitely likes to get forward, definitely likes to be brave on the ball. So I would definitely say more of a number 8 than a number 6, for sure. But maybe he could fill in short term for a 6 while we have players out for sure. I think he would definitely be expensive. For a player who's 22, remarkably, he's been playing a lot of football in Liga and for a while now. He's been playing over 30 games a season since 2020, which is 3 years, and has obviously played 12 games already this season. So although that figure of 22 might seem young, he's an experienced player.
22, and that's what we want. That's exactly what we want. You know, all the players that we've been kind of signing have been of that kind of model. Maybe Van der Ven aside because he only had one top season, but everyone else have been young and experienced. And I think that's what we want.
Yeah, I just feel like he might be unattainable for us. I have got a feeling he might have his heart set on bigger things like not trying to degrade our club, but I think he might have his heart set on Liverpool or a big club. So whether he's attainable, whether we can get him for a decent fee, I don't know. Are we really going if we're going to sign him, it's going to be, I think Liverpool had bids very high amount, big bids rejected for him. So I'm going to assume he's going to cost 50-60 million.
What's his contract saying?
His contract, I don't know.
I'm getting it up. 2025. Not that long left.
So it'll be a year.
A year in the summer.
A year in the summer. Okay.
The way Levy likes it.
Again, but I don't think in that affects much in January. Maybe in the summer it does. I do still think it's a big fee. But who would be more? Would it be him or Conor Gallagher? Who would be more expensive?
I think they've got similar time left on their contract. I actually think just a similar price point, to be honest. I don't think there'll be much in it. In terms of this season, he has played 9 as an 8 and 2 as a 6.
Yeah, definitely more of an 8. Definitely more of an 8.
150 appearances for Nice at such a young age is actually mad.
I would love him. I do feel like he'll be too expensive, but but you can make the same claim for Gallagher. So
in those 150 appearances for Nice, 52 have come as an 8 and 57 have come as a 6. 5 as a left and 6 as a left winger. So it shows his versatility.
Yeah, I think he can play both. I think recently though he's been definitely more of an 8.
Yeah,
but
more when he's kind of exploded.
Yeah,
one cap for France as well.
Yeah, he's a player with a really high potential.
What the hell? What the hell was Lilian Thuram doing to these two boys? I mean, what players both of them are? Marcus Thuram as well.
Are they brothers? Are they?
Yeah, Marcus Thuram as well is absolutely smashing it for Inter this season.
Yeah, he's doing brilliantly, and he was doing brilliantly
on the back of a great season last year as well.
For Gladbach. I would love him. I would love Thuram, but so something just tells me he's not going to be attainable this January. But I'd love to be wrong. I just feel like if Chelsea are more willing to deal with us, I feel like he might be more attainable than Thuram.
Who would you prefer, Thuram or Gallagher?
I feel like Thuram might have a higher ceiling. I feel like at the moment, Gallagher, in terms of just his all-round game, I feel like Thuram has a bit more quality about him. He's a bit stronger, a bit better when it comes to ball-carrying ability. But when it comes to being a bit more of a balanced midfielder, maybe Gallagher shades it, and he's Premier League proven. So I think I'll just shade it with Gallagher, but I do think maybe I could be looking stupid because I do think Thuram, probably ceiling-wise, might be higher than Gallagher. So on that basis, probably Thuram.
Gallagher does have the English quota as well, which we desperately need. So I think that massively works in his favour. But if you're just talking about quality of the players,
Thuram might be higher.
I think Thuram, in terms of what he can do in the final third as well, maybe his killer instinct is a bit more.
Gallagher might be better though.
Yeah, I could agree with that. But I think like Kefren Thuram, I think he's just got that bit more of a killer instinct than Conor Gallagher has.
I feel like Thuram has a bit more of that star quality. I feel like Gallagher doesn't have that. He's very much a good player, but he does. I don't know if he has the star quality that Thuram has.
Both young players, though, and they can definitely kind of progress as time moves on. But the last player that we're going to look at in terms of a midfielder is the very attacking option of Oscar Gluck, 19 years of age, 15 million euro market value, plays for RB Salzburg, another team who just have a conveyor belt of talent. Every time I see this guy play, he either scores, assists, does something special in a game. He looks like probably one of the best players, if not the best player that Israel probably have ever produced, up there with the Yossi Benayoun's at such a young age as well, to show this kind of quality. To do it in the Austrian league, yeah, that's fair enough. You can say, it's not such a strong league, but he does it in the Champions League as well, which is absolutely incredible for someone of that age.
Yeah, 100%. Only 19 years of age. Played 15 times last season. He's already played 16 times this season. 6 goals and 5 assists during this time.
Is that the league or is that all comps?
That's his entire career at Salzburg. So 4 goals and 3 assists in the league this season. Is that the league? Yeah, domestic league. Yeah. So he's having a really good time of it for a 19-year-old as well. And as you say, I've been watching some of their games in the Champions League, and he always seems to perform really well and really impressively as well. Doesn't seem to be out of his league or out of his depth whatsoever in the Champions League. So very, very impressive. When you look at the attributes, definitely performs. I mean, the attributes, I don't think tell too much of a story about how good he is at such a young age, but he's definitely better when it comes to the offensive stats. The non-penalty goals is decent. I would say passing is decent. Progressive passes. Obviously, I do think he's more of a 10 there, if anything. So he'd probably play back up to Maddison, if anything. Is that the position we most need right now? I don't know.
If Lo Celso goes.
But if Lo Celso goes, potentially. But I would still argue right now, I mean, I like him. I think he's clearly performing really high at a very young age. I wouldn't say he's the most necessary player right now, but definitely a player performing at a high level in Austria and in the Champions League. So definitely one to keep your eye on. I don't think it's one we're going to go out and buy in January, but I think definitely one for the future to keep your eye on, I would say.
Yeah, he's just a player that excites me so much. He really does. Every time I see him play, he's like kind of bums off your seat kind of player. He really is. And not only with these goal contributions, but he always seems to be taking shots and creating actions. And, I think he's a player that's going to be absolutely brilliant as well. He seems like a bit of a clutch player as well that scores important goals, not just like random goals here and there, but important ones quite consistently. So I agree. I don't think he's a player that we should probably be prioritising in January, but maybe come the summer, he could be someone that we could be looking at if Lo Celso does end up leaving.
That's what that's what I would say.
So that's the midfield options. Calvin Phillips, Conor Gallagher, Wilfred Ndidi, Kefren Turam, Oscar Gluck. In terms of ranking these players, I would probably say Turam, number 1. Gallagher, number 2. Phillips, number 3. And then probably Gluck and then Ndidi.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Let's look at the forward line now. We've got some left wingers and some strikers to talk about. First one we're going to talk about is Jota, obviously formerly of Celtic, now of Al Ittihad in Saudi, a player that obviously Ange Postecoglou knows really well, fit the system like a glove. He was a top performer for Ange Postecoglou out in Celtic, 24 years of age, 9 million market value, which I actually think we could get him for a decent fee. He's just not registered even for Al Ittihad. So he's a player that is very likely that we could sign for a decent fee in January, and probably a high quality one as well.
Yeah, obviously for one reason or another hasn't worked out at all out in Saudi for him, and he's not even in the squad for the domestic games. So he can only be involved in their Champions League games. So clearly he must be desperate to get out of there. When it comes to his attributes, obviously performs quite well, but obviously this is in the Champions League I'm looking at for Celtic, so not in the Scottish League. And look, performs really well for take-ons, good dribbling ability, and to do that in the Champions League is not easy. Progressive carries is good, shots total is good, shot creating actions is good. So I think when it comes to wingers that Ange likes, he likes players who are good at take-ons, maybe good at creating chances as well, carries into the final third, pretty strong at that. Progressive carries, he's strong at that. I'm trying to look at crosses, see if I can find the metric for crosses. Shot creating actions, 94th percentile in the Champions League. But then again, that's only based on 285 minutes. So how many games is that? 120 minutes is 2 games. So what, 4 games? So 6 games. That's the group stage. They got knocked out the group stage. Shots is pretty good. Passing's good. I don't see crosses into the penalty area. There you go. 2.21, 99th percentile. I mean, all the metrics you want, he's good at from a winger. So I would say definitely it's worth taking a punt on, especially if it's a very cheap deal. And obviously, as you say, Ange knows him. Good, he's a young winger as well. Position that we need, and his performance is strong at the metrics.
There's question mark with Jota over his physicality, and if he can do it week in, week out in a very physical league, which is the Premier League, which is something to consider. Obviously, he did perform in Celtic. I mean, look, Scotland in its own right is a very physical league, isn't it? The SPL. But I think when you're comparing it to the Premier League, it's just a bit of a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, but this is Champions League I was comparing it to. So these metrics, if he can perform well in the Champions League, there's no reason to say he can't do it in the Premier League.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. Who did Celtic have in their group? I know Real Madrid were one of the teams, I think.
I wouldn't be able to tell you who they had last season. Yeah, I do remember they had Real Madrid. I do think they lost all 6 group games.
They didn't have a good time of it in the Champions League, but I do remember the one game against Real Madrid, like they absolutely carved Real Madrid open time and time again. They just weren't clinical enough. They just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. So I think maybe losing all 6 games doesn't actually tell the whole story, but they were the weakest team in that group.
But anyway, regardless of that, to play in a team who lost all 6 games and, perform quite well on these metrics is still quite impressive.
Yeah, true. But that kind of does play into what I was saying as well about how they kind of tore Real Madrid apart but just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, and he was probably a key part of that as well.
Yeah, key passes as well. Look at that, 96th percentile. I think the metrics are strong.
Next up, we're going to talk about Samuel Illing Jr. of Juventus, another one from the Don Paratici repertoire. 20 years of age, 9 million market value, obviously at Juventus. He was seeing a lot more minutes last season as opposed to this season, which I'm not sure what that reasoning was, but he's another player that will fit the homegrown quota, an English boy playing out in Italy, which you don't see quite often. We've spoken about him quite a lot on this channel, and I think that he is an exciting player, but it does. I mean, I was about to say I have question marks on him because he doesn't play too much for Juventus. But then again, when we signed Kulusevski he wasn't playing too much for Juventus at the time.
Yeah, I'd say it's different because he's. If you look at his overall appearances, him and Bentancur still made a lot of appearances for them. Just when at the time we signed them, they weren't in the team. This guy, Illing Jr., has made 18 total appearances. Look, but he's only 19. So he's very young. You don't expect a player of that age to be, racking up loads of appearances.
Maybe it's impressive playing that many appearances at 19 years of age.
It makes sense that he's 19 and he's not going to be playing week in, week out at that age. It takes a real special talent or to be very special at that age to be playing week in, week out. It's not often, when you think about players at that age playing week in, week out, like remember Dele Alli broke into the Spurs team at 19, but it's a very rare thing to be at that age playing week in, week out. But in terms of the metrics he's got when it comes to the stats, what I'm looking at, look, this is only based off 587 minutes, and in fact, it's only comparing it to fullbacks. I'm guessing maybe he's playing wing back for them. I don't know.
We'll have a look.
Because it's only it's not comparing it to wingers, it's comparing it to fullbacks. So I have to assume he's only been maybe he's playing wing back a few times. I don't know, but he performs very well. But this is very well compared to fullbacks, not wingers. So it's hard to really judge, I would say, in terms of how well he actually performs in these metrics.
I'm just looking at it now. In terms of the 6 appearances he's had this season, he's actually played 1 game at central midfield. 1 game as a left winger and 3 games as a left midfielder.
That sounds like a wing back. Maybe
could be a wing back, but they usually say wing back if it's a wing back. I don't know. This is interesting.
Obviously, it's a small sample size regardless because there's not that many games. I don't know if did he start all those games.
Last season was all over on the left. Last season he didn't start. He started like 1 of them, maybe 2. This season, I don't think he started a game. No.
Okay, so we're off the bench. So I think these metrics, you can't really read too much into it because there's not much to go on when it comes to his game playing time. But definitely what I can see is good dribbling ability. He has ability to get into the final third. But look, a 19-year-old playing playing amount of games for Juventus is still good. He seems versatile as well. Is he a player who's going to come in and make an instant impact in the first team? I don't know. It's hard to say, to be honest. A bit of a risk, but definitely a player who we know can play at this level because he's showing it, and a versatile player. So I'm not against it, but it's nothing I can see right now suggests to me this is a must-have. But maybe they've scouted him and decided this guy, if we get him now, we're getting him ahead of the game.
A few months ago, 2 months ago, he played for England under-21s and he came on as a left back.
Okay.
So that's interesting. It seems like a very versatile player. So that is Samuel Illing Jr. Next up, we're going to look at Antonio Nusa of Club Bruges. 18-year-old, 17 million market value, playing obviously in the Belgian league for Club Bruges. Club Bruges not exactly having the best season out in Belgium, but he's definitely been a shining light for them. And at 18 years of age, yes, it's not the strongest league in the world, but the attributes that he's showing, you could be getting someone before they absolutely blow up. Obviously, me myself were very excited about someone like Gift Orban coming from Belgium in the summer. He hasn't really kicked on this season as opposed to what he did last season.
What's his name? Buchanan. Was he
Tejan Buchanan as well. He
Bruges?
Plays for Bruges. Yeah, you're right about that. But Antonio Nusa could be a bit of a different one, but he's a very quick, pacey winger who does seem to have quality about him.
Yeah, and in fact, he scored 3 goals in the Norwegian league when he was 15 in the first division. So
wow.
that goes to show probably how quickly he's come onto the scene. Very quickly joined Bruges this season. As you say, 2 goals, 2 assists at 18 years of age in 12 appearances. The metrics are very promising. Extremely good at dribbling. Very good at carrying. Definitely gets in shot creating actions. Gets his shots in. So as a winger, very promising. This is off 12 appearances, 920 minutes. So based off that, it's quite a lot of minutes as well. Obviously, it is in the Belgian league, but 18, still all of this is very, very impressive. When it comes to crossing, key passes and things like that, I'm trying to look how well he performs. Yeah, very key passes is above average. Crosses is above average as well, but it's not outstanding. But yeah, dribbling, getting in shooting positions, shot creating actions, all the very, very top. So to do that at 18 is very impressive. Even if he's in the Belgian league, it's still impressive to do that.
You know what? This could be a really good idea, signing someone of this age, because you've obviously got Heung-min Son, who's a left winger. And if we are going to keep him on the left wing, he's someone that can maybe come under Heung-min Son's wing, and he can really nurture him and give him all those advices, especially as he's the captain as well, and bleed him into the team as time goes on, and even get some minutes in Europe next season, or in the cup games next season, or even in the FA Cup this season if we do go and look at to bring him in January. I think this could be a smart addition. Yeah,
I agree. I think we have to be looking to the future, so I don't disagree. I think having someone like an 18-year-old like Nusa, blooding him in, not having that constant expectation to start every game, could definitely be, and someone maybe coming on against tired legs late in games as well, I think could very much be a interesting prospect.
And when you're looking at the likes of who we have there with like Brian Hill, it doesn't seem to be working out for Brian Hill at Spurs, to say the least. So if we could get some money in for Brian Hill and replace him for someone like him, I think that would be a great addition.
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to give that a go.
Next up, these two players now we're going to talk about next is two players I massively rate, and what I've seen from both of them this season, especially in the Champions League, I've been super impressed. The first player we're going to talk about is Galatasaray's Kerem Aktoglu, 25 years of age, 17 million market value. Obviously, like I said, at Galatasaray, he's a player exactly that tore Man United to shreds, to be honest, in both the games. I've seen him in the majority of games that Galatasaray play in the Champions League, and he's been an absolute standout performer. I think he actually started one of the games against Man United on the bench, but came on and absolutely ripped them to shreds. Scored the goal. He looks like a player of supreme quality. At 25 years of age, though, he's not exactly a spring chicken.
Yeah, I do. Isn't he also can play number 10 as well, can play second striker. He's I wouldn't say he's a classic Postecoglou winger from what I can see. He's not a winger who's, constantly taking people on, that kind of thing with pace. I would say if he was to play for us, he would probably be more of a central player than a winger, although he does play out wide for Galatasaray. Looking at the metrics from him in the Champions League this season, definitely doesn't seem like a player who's got the right attributes for what we want. Does do a lot of crosses when it comes to take-ons and that kind of stuff. Doesn't perform very well. Passes fairly low as well. Definitely decent when it comes to shots and things like that, but definitely has more of a profile for more of a central player than a real winger that we like in Postecoglou's system, I would say.
And I guess like in terms of a central player or a winger that we want to turn into a central player, we do have Kulusevski there. Is there a desperate need for someone like that has the attributes more centrally than out wide?
Probably not. Probably not, considering he's 25 as well.
But he is a top player. I love watching him play. I really do. I thought he was a shining light for Galatasaray this year in the Champions League.
Yeah, I do. I think he's played really well. I just think it depends what we want. If we're looking for a winger, I just don't see him being the guy, to be honest.
Does that maybe he hasn't shown it for Galatasaray because of the way they play? Is it?
I just don't think he's that kind of player. He's just not that. He's not the player that we're like in terms of a winger. How Ange likes his wingers, he's not that kind of player. He's a different kind of. Like when he's playing on the wing, he's more of like a Jack Grealish kind of winger, if you know what I mean. Someone who likes the ball to feet, likes to pass or move kind of thing. I think Ange likes direct wingers, take on their man, cause problems in that way with pace. He's just not that kind of player.
Well, if you want to talk about direct, let's go on to the next man, because he has also been an absolutely shining light this season in League and Champions League for PSV Eindhoven, and it's Johan Bakayoko. We have been linked with him in the past. 20 years of age, 40 million euro market value. I mean, I just think he looks like dynamite. I was watching him against Arsenal in the Champions League in the group phase, and I thought he looked incredible. Absolutely incredible. One-on-one take-ons, shooting ability, crossing ability. I feel like he's got it all.
Yeah. I was just looking at his metrics, and when you look at his domestic metrics, it's obviously like incredible, like 99th percentile and everything. Like it's amazing. But when I do look at it in the Champions League, it's not as strong. It's strong, to be fair, but it's not as strong as in the Eredivisie. So I think that may goes to show he's maybe not at that level where it's as easy for him in the Champions League as it is in the Eredivisie. I think maybe Eredivisie is too easy for him potentially at this point. Albeit his goal contributions this season, 3 goals, 8 assists in 16 games, but he is 20 years of age. So I think to be getting that guy kind of goal output at such a young age is very, very impressive. But I'm looking at the metrics in the Champions League. Take-ons, very good. Carries, very good. Shot-creating actions, very good. These are the kind of attributes to me that tell me he's definitely more of a fit for Postecoglou's system, playing on that left-hand side. Or the right-hand side. I do believe he's left-footed. So he can. I do think he predominantly plays on the right, but I think he can be coached to play on the left as well. He does like to be more of a cutting kind of player. But when it comes to let me see, crosses in the box, so progressive carries, progressive passes received, all that kind of stuff, very good. Take-ons, very strong. So even though it's in the Champions League, his take-on percentage is very good. Key passes, 89th percentile. Crosses in the box, 96th percentile. So I'm looking at those stats, and that's very much the attributes you want for a winger under Postecoglou.
Yeah, I mean, the eye test back all those things up as well, because every time I've seen him play, he just looks such a danger. Even in the Champions League, was getting consistent shot on targets, and he gave Arsenal real problems in both the games, to be honest. And I actually think out of all those wingers, I think I would favour him at the top, to be honest.
He nearly signed for Burnley, even in the summer. Burnley were heavily looking at him, which goes to show maybe the level of it. Well, there was a lot of interest from him in the summer. Spurs were linked with him. I can't remember who else. There was a lot of teams. And Burnley nearly stole him right at the end. Maybe they're the only team that are actually willing to put the money on the table. But I think once you've seen him in the Champions League this season, that surely allayed some fears for people that whether he's ready at this level, because he looked great.
He really did look great. In terms of the wingers, I put him absolutely at the top of the list. I think he's a player that can play on both wings, one-on-one demon. He has attributes that maybe a lot of our wingers don't have at the moment and that we need. So I would put him top. Would you agree, or would you put someone else at the top?
Yeah, I'd put him top.
Bakayoko,
I think he's
Nusa, Illing Jr. and Jota.
I'll probably put Bakayoko top, probably Jota second,
then Nusa
third,
Illing Jr. Actacoglu.
Yeah. Based on attributes wise, from what I'm seeing, I think that's what I'll do.
And then to finish this off, we've only got just 2 strikers to talk about. First one is going to be the name on everyone's lips at the moment, and that is Santiago Jimenez of Feyenoord, 22 years of age, 50 million market value. This guy is having a season from heaven at the moment, literally 18 goals and 16 appearances in the Eredivisie, 4 assists in the Champions League, 4 appearances, 2 goals, 1 assist. I mean, he's having a stunning season at that age as well. You're looking at a player who has supreme ability and a high ceiling. So if we can get him in, that would be a massive coup for the club.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen and watched him in a few Champions League games, and he really looks like he's playing the part. He doesn't just lead the line and run in behind and score goals. He likes to get involved in the play as well. He's really good at hold-up play, and he's actually quite kind of a bit of a hub of the team. A bit like how we were treating Harry Kane back, last season or a couple of seasons, when he's just like everything goes through him. That's how Feyenoord go through Jimenez at the moment. He's playing so well. If you obviously his metrics really in the Champions League really high in terms of the goal scoring, outperforms his XG. As you say, like 2 goals, 1 assist as well in the Champions League for a final team. Obviously, aren't going to be one of the favourites, but when it comes to his passing ability as well, a decent amount of assists. His shots on goal was really high, and he's a tall striker as well. He's 5'11", fairly tall. Maybe he could bulk up a bit in terms of physicality. Only 132 pounds, 59 kilograms, which for a lot of others. But maybe that's what gives him his edge when it comes to maybe a bit of pace. Maybe that's a help.
He's very nimble on his feet.
He is very nimble. Could he struggle with the physicality of the Premier League? There's definitely a question mark on that. But definitely from what I'm seeing, I really like what I'm seeing from Jimenez so far from when I've seen him in the Champions League. Perform really well.
Those numbers in the Eredivisie is just insane, isn't it? 18 goals, 16 appearances. Just insane. Again, like, he's obviously got a lot of interest in him at the moment. He'll probably command quite a big fee, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would definitely. The only question mark is he going through a bit of a hot streak? But then again, last season, 32 games, 15 goals as well. So it's not exactly like he wasn't performing last season. This season, he's really exploded. So this is a guy definitely who's breaking out at the moment. So it's definitely one where we have to consider whether we're getting him at the right time, or is it just someone going for a hot streak? And if you want to be wary of paying a lot of money, because a lot of people calling for Orban. Are people calling for him again? Still, probably not. So you got to be wary of a lot of these strikers sometimes. But he's been great.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the last player that we are going to talk about, and you talk about hot streaks, this guy might be the epitome of hot streaks, and it's Sergio Guirassy of Stuttgart, 27 years of age, 40 million euro market value, which has just shot up this season, when last season his market value was 14 million, which is absolutely crazy. He scored 16 goals in 13 appearances for Stuttgart this season. But he's never, ever in his career seen anything like these kind of stats before. So when you're talking about hot streak at 27 years of age, maybe he is just a late bloomer, but it does more suggest to me that this is a bit of a hot streak.
Yeah, I definitely would be wary about splashing big money on a player who's 27.
He's got a very low release clause, like 17 million or something.
Okay,
13
so
million.
It could be worth taking a punt on that, I guess, if in terms of that kind of price range. So the stats do seem to suggest he is playing very well at the moment. It's not just a hot streak, and that he's very high for shot creating actions. He's not massively outperforming his XG as well, with non-penalty goals still 99th percentile. Shots is high. Passing, he seems quite a lot. He attempts a lot of passes for a striker, which is very encouraging for someone who's involved in build-up play.
They play, I think Stuttgart play more of like a 4-4-2 system, and up front he plays with Undav, and they've got quite a good relationship there.
Okay, so I guess that might be different to playing maybe a bit of a lone strike role, which you would at Tottenham. Touching the penalty area is very, very high. Take-on's not so high when it comes to having the ball with his feet, but that doesn't necessarily mean too much. You potentially don't have to take people on in our system as a striker. So the stats definitely bear out when it comes to him. Obviously, he's in a massive scoring streak at the moment. So definitely, maybe there is one to take a pound on. Key passes in the 89th percentile as well in the Bundesliga. It's just, you got to be, I don't know, it's just strange that he's only now exploding at 27 when he's had a whole career behind him. I don't know what's changed for him. But the numbers, if I'm looking at these numbers in terms of the attributes, shot creating actions is really high as well. So definitely seems like a striker who's not just scoring goals, but also getting involved in the general play for his team as well, albeit he's only got 1 assist. But his expected assists is 3. So it should be that 1 assist maybe doesn't represent his overall game.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't... It's just a risk, isn't it, Guirassy, at 27 years of age, to bring him in when you can go for a Santiago Jimenez. I know Jimenez will be like probably triple what he'll cost, maybe even quadruple. But
in a weird way, though, Jimenez is younger, right? But the numbers in terms of the attributes, Guirassy's stronger at.
Yeah, but he is 7 years older, or 6 years older.
He's 5 years older.
5
years older, yeah. So obviously so you're paying for Jimenez, you're paying for maybe a player with a potential higher ceiling, a lot more room to grow, whereas Guirassy, this is probably him at his absolute peak, and this is the best it's going to get for him. But as a striker who's maybe more ready now in terms of what I'm seeing in the attributes, maybe Guirassy would be the better option, interestingly enough. But I think most people would probably rather Jimenez through the door.
Yeah, I would rather Jimenez, to be honest. There's actually one more player that I want to look at, because a lot of people in the comments keep mentioning him, so I thought we may as well look at him. And he goes by the name of Dusan Vlahovic of Juventus. 23 years of age. It feels like he should be a lot older, because it seems like he's been around forever.
Seems like he's been around for a while.
tall Juventus striker. Hasn't really happened for him at Juventus, has it? After that amazing period he had at Fiorentina. For Serbia as well, they always seem to favour Mitrovic over Vlahovic, albeit Vlahovic still gets lots of minutes for them. His contract's up in 2026. He's got a market value of 70 million euros. I just can't see Spurs ever pushing the button on someone like that, especially as he seems to have had some sort of dip in his career at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, 22 goals overall in 56 games for Juventus. Not a horrific goal scoring record, but when they spent the money they spent on him, he thought he was gonna, maybe have like don't know who whatever the top strikers numbers. It's not terrible, but it's not like maybe what they expected because of how he was firing them in for Fiorentina. The metrics don't really look great for him. But if I'm comparing the metrics, maybe when he was at Fiorentina, maybe that'll give us a better indication of his true nature. But then again, maybe Juve is more of a better indication of his actual level than the Fiorentina time. But if I'm looking at his time at Fiorentina, if I'm looking at the metrics there,
him at Fiorentina was an absolute beast. He was an absolute beast.
A lot better at Fiorentina than they are now. But he seems to be a player playing without confidence as well. He seems to Allegri doesn't always fancy him. The Juventus fans haven't really taken to him. Definitely a player who's got a bit of a confidence issue. Definitely, he's definitely a bit of a target man. Good, really sweet left foot. Good, decent hold-up play. I do think he could do a good job, but I don't know how much we're going to actually have to spend to buy him.
I reckon he is like someone that Ange could bring back on form, but it's a massive risk for a massive layout.
Yeah, if they're looking to recoup their money, I just don't see the point in spending that amount on him.
And there are so many other players like that player out in Lisbon at the moment. I was watching it last night. Lisbon against Porto. Oh my God, this guy looked insane in that game as well. Sporting Lisbon at home to Porto, where Porto have usually had the better of those ties. He fired Lisbon top of the league last night, scoring a goal, and he had one that was ruled out as well. I can't remember his name. Gyökeres. He looks insane.
Oh, look at that. These metrics are great.
He looks absolutely insane. He was in the Championship last season, wasn't he, for like Coventry?
Yeah. 10 goals, 5 assists in 13 games in the Portuguese league this season. Gyökeres.
He looks like a serious player, but he's only just signed for them last summer. So he hasn't been there for that long.
Yeah, I can't see us signing him in January. But this guy seems to be performing extremely well. He's doing so well for Lisbon at the moment, for Sporting, sorry.
Yeah.
So definitely, I can't see him leaving after 6 months, but definitely.
Maybe something for the future to keep an eye on, because he seems like a top talent.
I mean, he was in the Championship, he smashed out in the Championship.
Yeah, he did. Didn't he finish top goal scorer in the Championship last year?
Oh, no,
not top goal scorer.
21 and 10 assists. And the season before that, 17 goals, 5 assists. So last 3 seasons, been performing really well. But he is 25 now, getting into his peak. Tall striker, 6'1" as well. Maybe it's one just to keep an eye on. I don't know if it's one we're going to be going for. Maybe in the summer.
Someone in the comments says he's got a 65 million euro release clause.
Right. Is that something we're going to activate in January?
Probably not.
I don't see that.
Seeing as there's not much money available, apparently.
Maybe Kulu can tell us about him.
Yeah, maybe. But look, I think we'll call it there. A lot of players looked at. Hopefully you found this episode quite informative. We'll snip them up and put them up position by position on the channel if you want to go back and see it. But yeah, a lot to dig into there. A lot of players, a lot of stats, a lot of information. So let us know in the comment section below, out of each position, who would you favour? Who would you want to see through the door? But that's it from us today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.